Mr. Casey Castillo, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Tim.
Absolutely. And I have my guest, Anna Vitali, here from Growth Inc. as well. Anna, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Casey.
So today we're talking about feeding a county, the mission to end hunger. That is pretty audacious. It's a large goal. It's a big goal. And I like big goals. They sound extreme and it gives us something to aim for. How did you get there? How did you start wrapping your head around such a big goal?
I think big problems deserve a big goal. That's how we got there. And I think organizations, including nonprofits, need to think bigger, need to be bold, and solving hunger in a large county like San Diego's, it deserves a big, bold goal. My hunt then was to find teammates and to build a culture that would really dive in, commit to that, and to be willing to put into work to do it.
So maybe you could take us back to the very early days of the San Diego Food Bank. What was the impetus of this and how did you start making progress?
So, I mean, the history of the organization is that it was created in 1977. So we'll be celebrating 50 years in 2027, but really had a rebirth back in 2007, 2008, where it split away from a parent organization that it belonged to. And I think that's when really we saw the growth in the organization and when the organization starts looking at tackling large problems. Now, I just transitioned from being the chief financial officer in the organization to the CEO 3 years ago. And with that, I wanted to create a new strategic plan. I wanted to visit our vision, making sure as we built our leadership team that we had a shared vision, and then wanted to make sure we had strategic goals to help us get there. And so all that really started about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And we've made a ton of progress during that time.
So what's it like shifting from a CFO to a CEO? I mean, a lot of times those are very different hats. We love a good old-fashioned financial model and a spreadsheet. So we would very often kind of recommend looking to folks that have a good handle of the numbers and the finances to come in and be an operating partner versus, looking outside of the organization cold to try to find a CEO and bring them in. Like, what is that transition like?
It's different and it's interesting. One of the things that I had to become more comfortable with, and certainly probably the biggest shift, was that the CEO role is a very external role here at the food bank. I'm out with partners and establishing relationships, also fulfilling media obligations, speaking, doing a lot more of that, where the 20 plus years I spent as CFO, a lot of that was in the background, which I'm comfortable with too. So it was a big shift in that way. But I agree with you. I think I really appreciate my perspective in the 20 plus years of being a CFO and the 13 years of being a chief financial officer here at the San Diego Food Bank, because I think it was great preparation for establishing the vision here, understanding all parts of the organization, and really helping to set some of those really audacious goals that you mentioned before. My first experience here at the food bank, and we were a much smaller organization then. I had a very small accounting team, and almost immediately I lost a member who moved out of state, and then the other accountant went on maternity leave. It was just me in the department the first couple months I started the food bank. So I got to see every single invoice and transaction for the organization. I think it was the best way to understand food banking and our organization. So I agree with you. I think the other thing we're seeing now and we'll continue to see, is that CFOs have been asked to be more of a strategic partner in nonprofit organizations, but also for-profit organizations in recent years. I think that transition, one, is going to be easier, and we will see a lot more CFOs take on that CEO role.
What are some things, Casey, on that point? I mean, part of our work with you that's been fascinating to me is the perspective that there's revenue in terms of donations coming in, but then financial, monetary donations, but there's also the physicality of donated food from any variety of sources. And so how do you think about that from a financial perspective, or what might be something surprising that people wouldn't think about when it comes to the financials of a food bank?
We're a complicated organization with a complicated model. One of the things I've done is the last couple of years as I've built my team, brought a lot of team members in from the for-profit space, haven't had nonprofit experience. They've been executives for large companies, large corporations, but as they come here into the food bank, they're blown away at the complexities that we have in all the moving parts. We're not just selling widgets. As you point out, we have to worry about fundraising. It's a big part of our revenue stream. But we also have other revenue streams. We feed people. So we're a large operation, 50 million pounds distributed last year, nearly 40 million meals countywide. So we're a warehouse, and we have drivers, and we have warehouse workers, and we're a big operation. But we're also very program centered. We have 12 programs that help us get and reach those 400,000 people that we're serving every month. And so those are all pieces, moving parts that we have to be aware of and shape all those parts to make sure that it fits a revenue stream, and that we're able to do that. We're able to make good on the promises that we've made. And I think you mentioned the partnership with Growth Inc. It's been a great partnership. The project, I think, was very enlightening for the whole team, but it was just that. It was about pulling all these pieces together and to help us forecast out 3, 4, 5 years, inventory, revenue, expenses, all of those things, to make sure as we set those large goals and we see that vision and want to get there in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as you set those goals, that the revenue, the expenses, the operations of the organization are all headed in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned, some of the team members that you've brought in who are coming from the private sector. And I think there's often, among our clients, a curiosity about the nonprofit sector, about how things work. And I would agree, out of all clients in recent memories, I think you probably have the most complex operations of most, if not all of them, simply because you are relying on donations, some of which are stable and predictable sources of donations, some of which are not, and then needing to deliver something based off of that. So, the talk about supply chain complexity, but I'd love to hear, what your impressions are, your team members who've come from the private sector, over how that transition has been for them, what's been surprising, good and bad.
Great question. So we have a broader leadership team, director and above, and we have an executive team. And I'll start with the executive team for now. We brought in an executive from a large sports franchise. I brought in an executive from a public accounting firm, a national firm. Brought in an executive from financial banking, not food banking. And an executive from a major consulting firm. They've all said the same thing. This is much harder. They're working harder now than they've ever worked before. But I went out to get them specifically for their skill set and their experience. As you point out, we have supply chain needs. We have operational needs. And so I was very mindful and in that, and targeted in who we went after. It just happened to be I was pulling them from the private sector, and it was a great move, and it's what is going to allow us to accomplish those goals that we've set and achieve that grand vision, that grand shared vision.
So a lot of times when we talk about entrepreneurship, It seems to be very fast moving, very innovative. You think about guys like, I won't name any here because I don't want to get in trouble, but we think about all the major entrepreneurs that have done a lot of really cool
I
things.
just read a few of their books, so I know who you're talking
Did a
about.
few of their books, yeah. But when we think about the nonprofit, we don't think about it as maybe as slick or as fast moving or as hip, right? But there's a lot of moving parts. So what is that connection from entrepreneurship and the nonprofit space? Like, do you feel like an entrepreneur on a day-to-day basis building this thing, or do you feel like a nonprofit executive? I mean, is there a distinction between the two?
Yeah, no, I think that's our culture here. It's one of the reasons I love being here because there is that connection. My background, as I mentioned, is from the is a chief financial officer. That's most of my experience. But in graduate school, I had a heavy focus on entrepreneurial classes. It's what I'm drawn to, and I think that's the culture here. And we've done a lot of unique things here at the San Diego Food Bank that is not being done in other food banks across the country. And I got to be a part of those things, lead those things in many ways. Our compost and recycling center, our repack center. So I think that is the mindset here. I've worked hard to try to create that culture. And again, what I often say to the team is that we are problem solvers. Whether you're the chief financial officer, a program coordinator, a receptionist, a volunteer coordinator, we all are problem solvers, and we have a real big problem to solve, and that is food insecurity in San Diego County. So it's going to take innovation. It's going to take an entrepreneurial mindset, and as an organization, we have to be we have to have the skill set to do that, and have to be willing to take those risks. And that's, again, I go back to Grow Think. That was a part of the plan. We wanted Grow Think to help us with that large business plan, capture all those things, and in some ways, to mitigate risk. But I don't want to be an organization that tries to go completely away from risk. That is part of being an entrepreneur and having that spirit.
Let's talk real briefly about some of those risks. What are some of those identifiable risks that maybe you're stepping into?
Well, we are, and this was part of the project as well. We are going to be building a new building, a new warehouse in the next couple of years, and it'll be more than twice the size of our current warehouse. And I don't want the capacity just to multiply by two, and we're really doing our research so it could be, we can magnify it by 3, 4, 5 times. But doing that and creating that capacity that will allow us to reach everybody facing food insecurity in San Diego County is a risk. It's a risk to push our team and our stakeholders in that direction. It's a risk because there's a financial target that we're going to have to meet. And I think it's going to take us, it's going to take goals that are not just incremental goals. It's going to take stretch goals throughout all areas of the organization. And you know this, you've been in this world. That's not a natural thing for most people. Most people don't want to stretch themselves or are uncomfortable doing that with the goals and the priorities they set for themselves, their department, and for the organization. And so it's a real risk to change that culture, change that behavior, and to create really a safe place where people can do that and know that we're going to go after big things here. And it's possible we fall short in some areas, and that we'll see that as progress and not necessarily a failure.
I want to just touch on your personal motivation a bit, Casey, because I think it's so unique. Like, not to keep touching back to the private sector, but if you're the founder of a private company, you're balancing this level of risk typically with a financial reward. And yes, like people want to have an impact, and some people are more mission driven than others. But when you think about the reward to you, personally, what are you tapping into that enables you to want to really, kind of put yourself on the line in some respects to go after these reach goals that are very noble, but nevertheless come with this level of risk?
Another great question. The reward is that we're able to reach and feed everybody facing food insecurity. So that's a big reward. The risk to that is um, constructing a new warehouse, um, doubling the amount of food that we're going to distribute has a cost, and we're going to need to get there. But again, the motivation is that we're doing great work and that we're changing lives. It's really easy for me to come to work. I think it's easy for most of our other food bankers to come to work each day because of that reason. And again, I think that reward's enough. The reward that we are going to feed families and individuals each day, and that we have it's a real opportunity. We have a real opportunity to do something that is not necessarily being done in most communities, and that is to create an infrastructure and have the ability to reach everyone. So that if you are hungry in San Diego County right now, through the San Diego Food Bank and our partners, you can get a meal, you can get food today. That again, that's a big enough reward for me.
With the trends of kind of food consumption, just the movement away from cooking at home, generally ordering out, fast food, restaurant, meal delivery. Many of your clients are homeless. What is the challenge in feeding people when you think of bridging the gap from just a set of ingredients to a meal? Yeah. And how has that maybe changed over your time at the food bank?
You're absolutely right about that. One of our big focuses in the last couple of years was that because we consider ourselves a nutrition bank as well. So the 50 million pounds that we distributed last year, half of that was fresh fruits and vegetables. So that's one way and one focus area for us. But the other thing I would say, and you're absolutely right, eating habits have changed. And because of busy work schedules and busy lives, families are looking for prepared meals now more than ever. And you see a lot of vendors like grocery stores making those accommodations. Now, food banks across the country and historically rely on, to some extent, some more than others, food rescue. So the food that's being rescued from grocery stores, large convention centers or restaurants. And we do that too. We rescue 5 to 10 million pounds a year from those partners. But what's happening and what's interesting is those partners are getting better and better with their supply, which means those supplies are decreasing. So food banks are going to have to adapt to that. Now, what grocery stores are doing, though, is they're also now moving into this prepared meal business. And so I think that's where where the relationship's going to grow, where that partnership can change and grow, is that food banks can be a part of that. Now, because of the ready meals, it means they have a very short shelf life. So I think we can help grocery partners and other partners like that move that food when they need it moved. And so I think that's an area. I think that's a shift that we're looking at and other food banks are looking at. Just had a conversation with a food bank we visited across the country last week. And that was certainly something they were mindful of as well.
What do you identify as the biggest challenge to getting to where you're trying to head?
I think the sheer numbers and the demand. 839,000 people are estimated to be food insecure in San Diego County. I would say that's the biggest challenge. And then with that is the logistics that come along with that. We get food out in the community in two major ways. We have direct distributions. We're directly filling our trucks and taking them out to several hundred distribution sites every month. We also partner with approximately 500 nonprofits. And those nonprofit organizations have feeding programs. They come to our two warehouses to get food, and they take it back to their constituents. They take it back to their food pantries, to their kitchens, to their drive-throughs. And we reach 300,000 people a month, 2 to 300,000 that way. So the logistics of that, right? And we're feeding over 400,000 people if 800,000 are food insecure, we're going to have to figure out a way how to increase capacity throughout the whole system, the whole network, not just our direct distributions with our fleet of 30 vehicles, but we're going to have to figure out how to raise capacity with our 500 nonprofit partners as well. So I think that's a hurdle and something that we'll be working on in the coming years. I think the last thing I would add to that is the stigma that people fight. It's hard for people to ask for help. It's hard for me. I think it's probably hard for you. And COVID helped quite a bit because most people needed help during that time. It's reverted a little bit, unfortunately. It's still better than it was, but it's our responsibility as an organization to make sure people are aware of us and they feel safe and comfortable and know that it will be a dignified experience when they come to us. So that's another. I think that's an ongoing challenge. It's something we'll always work towards and strive for. Those are really the challenges that come to mind, Tim.
Good.
I'll add one last one, and it has to do with where we are right now. Philanthropic dollars in some key categories are declining. However, the need has still continued to climb, to increase. And so as if you were to graph that, it's a bad trend. And the convergence of those lines, not great. And so that's an ongoing concern as we talk to other food banks. Now, we have been fortunate in San Diego. San Diego community is great. They can continue to support us. I think they really understand food insecurity and the need in San Diego County. So we haven't really seen some of those trends, but we are aware of them and certainly mindful of them. And so as we have goals to grow, if our mindset continues to be growth and we have those big lofty goals to reach everybody, we're going to have to figure out what it looks like if philanthropic dollars stagnates or declines. And so that'll be something we're tackling in the future as well.
One more area that's fascinating to me is your strategic partner strategy and how you've been able to leverage so many and engage so many different groups across the area. And I mean, what do you attribute that to, or what is the team's approach in building those connections and executing effectively across all these different independent groups? I'm sure with varying levels of, efficiency and operational strengths. Would just love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's inherent in our model. I think it's inherent in our mission, and that is that we partner, and that's how this work gets done. I mean, that's how we truly, again, to have these audacious goals. Yeah, it's great for us to have them, but the reality is we don't get there unless the whole system is elevated. Because again, it really is going to take government agencies, it's going to take private sector for-profit organizations and corporations, and it's going to take the nonprofit world to solve these big problems. And so we do have to partner. We do partner with with organizations now. We're going to have to strengthen those partnerships and establish new partnerships. And so that's just the reality. We're aware of that, and we're working on that. I think I'd also say that we are because we reach and we connect with so many people throughout the county. I mean, over 400,000 people. When we are a trusted organization, we're a trusted brand. I think part of that partnership model is that we can be a connector. We can be a trusted connector. So I'm not saying that we need to do all of this work and that our mission needs to expand in any way. I think it's enough for us to understand our partnerships and who can help holistically these individuals and families that are coming to us in need. If you're struggling putting food on the table, you're struggling paying your rent, your utilities, you're struggling with medical bills. I think we can utilize our partners better, and we can be a main connector and helpmate for our recipients.
I want to shift the focus just a little bit for the audience member here who is considering starting a nonprofit. What would be your advice to anyone looking to get into the space and give what you do a go?
I'll start with the first part, and that is if someone's interested in starting a nonprofit. I would say great, because again, I think nonprofits are going to be a big way that we solve societal issues. But first, I would make sure there is a clear need. I'll just say San Diego alone, there are thousands and thousands of nonprofit organizations. So make sure you're not duplicating those efforts. And then if you found a space, then I would say go about it in the right way. Use professionals, use attorneys, use accountants, and do it the right way. It's not a hobby, right? I get that it might be a passion and a cause for you, but it's not a hobby. So I would say do it the right way. And I would say potentially start by volunteering. And volunteering can be in a variety of capacities. It can be, for instance, for us, you can come and put boxes together, or you can volunteer and be on a board. I would suggest doing all of those things. What was the second part of that question, Tim?
Well, maybe there's somebody in the private space that wants to try their hand in the nonprofit space and make that career shift.
Yeah. We see that often. I'd first start with, because this is something I've experienced with. It's not a place to come when you're ready to retire, because you think it's going to be a little bit more relaxing or a nice transition, because in a lot of cases you're going to be working harder. So I would say I'd have similar advice, and get involved in something that you really care about. Figure out how your skill set is going to move that work forward and align with that mission. And start with volunteering in a variety of capacities to make sure it's a right fit for you. Again, I highly encourage it. It's what I've looked for as I bring people on the team. But make sure it's right for you, because there will be some compromises you might be making, and make sure that's going to be right for you.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Not duplicating, using professionals, doing your homework, volunteering, joining a board. Like all this is really sound advice. What would be if you had just one word of encouragement for someone who's in it right now, but they're feeling stuck? What would that be?
It's a difficult decision because it's hard to know why they're stuck. I mean, there could be so many reasons why someone is stuck. But I think it does. I think we are in an industry in the nonprofit world where it takes passion to do this work, because often it's so hard. I would say find ways to get closer to the mission. Similar advice that I would give that I just mentioned, for like the food bank, for example. If you're feeling stuck, go out and volunteer or work one of our distributions. So you're actually physically handing food to a recipient, to a grandmother, or you're interacting with those that need our support. Let that be the inspiration for you. The other thing I would say is, if that's not going to do it for you, getting close to your mission, maybe that's not the mission for you. And so I think there are plenty of other opportunities, plenty of other great missions out there. Do your homework, get out there, volunteer, find ways to be connected to these other missions and other organizations to find what motivates you and inspires you the most. I think that those would be my two things that I would suggest.
I love all of it, and how at the end of the day, what you are delivering is, food, sustenance, that one-on-one, like you mentioned, to get back in touch with the mission. But then on the back end of it, the sophistication, the complexity of the operations of the partnership network that the food bank has built. It's like the best of both worlds.
Casey, how do people get a hold of you and interact and work with your organization?
I will talk to anybody, so you're always welcome to email or call me. I would say visit our website, sandiegofoodbank.org, to learn more about us, to find ways to get involved. We try to make it easy to get involved. You can volunteer here in our warehouses or out at distribution sites. You can host food drives virtually or physically, and if you choose, you can donate monetarily. So. And then there's other things to learn about, like our programs and all the things that we have to offer. So sandiegofoodbank.org, it's a great way.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you both.